Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Doom Productions podcast, a podcast hosted by Doom Productions. I'm Jordan, and I'm usually joined by Ethan, but this week it is just me. Ethan's been a little busy. He took a little trip down to, or I guess up to Yakima, Washington for the premiere of Hotel, the new film by RC Films. I believe it's out right now, so if you haven't seen it, please go check it out. Because I think this episode is going to be released on the 29th. Should be out right now. Go check it out, the movie. We were producers on the film. And so the reason I'm here just by myself is because Ethan drove up to Yakima, Washington for the premiere of the movie. I was preoccupied with some prior engagements. And it sounds like he had an awesome time. He got to meet a lot of great people. Some of people who we've already met, like we've already met the RC Films boys, of course. We've met the Grannon Films girls, of course. We've talked briefly with Kyle and Gage online, but sounds like Ethan was able to meet those folks and hang out with all the amazing filmmakers up in Yakima, Washington. Which, surprisingly, who would have guessed, there's a huge film community in Yakima, Washington, which is awesome. It's pretty incredible where you're going to find pockets of really talented people to collaborate with or just enjoy their content. So I know that was just a lot of names, and this thing has just started. We're only a minute into this thing pretty much, but if I can plug anything in particular right now, I would just say go check out Hotel by RC Films right now. It's a new movie. It's out. And after you've seen that, check out the rest of the RC Films movies, but also shout out to the filmmakers Gage Clift, Kyle Roy, Grannon Films. I'm sure there are many more filmmakers who I'm forgetting right now. There's a lot of talented people, but those are some friends and fans of ours who we're big fans of as well, and we would love it if more people checked him out, if you haven't already. So, Ethan, well, anyways, back to the reason why it's just me today. Ethan went out, he met all those folks, he stayed for the premiere. Sounded like it was a very eventful premiere. I'm sure Ethan will, if you listen to last week's episode, I believe they talk about it a little bit, but yeah, Ethan recorded a lot of videos and podcasts, and he's editing that together, and I figured, why not just do a solo episode? Ethan got to do an episode with the RC Films boys. This is kind of my my side of things for the week. Just a nice change of pace. So I've been busy, hard at work on a couple things right now. Right now I am working on a new feature film called La Danza. We have been shooting, well, we've only really shot for one day technically. We're prepping for the next little block of shooting. The way we're going to be filming this movie is a little bit different than we've done things before. We usually try to schedule out films to shoot for in kind of a marathon, really fast sprint style. I guess marathon isn't the right word, a fast sprint in a way, where we block out a month and we try to cram that month, which is with as many days of shooting, and get through the filming as quick as possible so we can get the movie edited and released as soon as possible. And that's just how we've worked before. That's how we like working. But this movie's a little different. La Danza is kind of planned in these... I'm looking at my organization sheet right now. It's, maybe 15 little blocks of shooting, and spreading those 15 blocks around 4 or 5 months or so. So the idea as of now is just to, spend a month prepping for a couple of days of shooting, which is, if you're used to shooting in our sprint style where we are prepping to shoot an entire feature film within 2 weeks or a month or even less than that, it's a very nice change of pace, and things have been great so far. And it's a project that we're really excited about. I kind of want to keep it close to the chest in terms of what exactly it's all about, all that kind of thing. But I will say that there's a short film which this feature film is an expansion of, called The End of Consciousness. You can check out that short film on our channel. So we made that film, and after making it, I was just really inspired by that character in the world, and I was like, hey, this would make a fun feature film. I think this would be a really fun opportunity to like explore this world and characters further. And it's just one of those moments where, you know, you're struck by inspiration, pure inspiration. So it's been a fun project. Not a I mean, I guess, without spoiling things too much, it's not a project I anticipate a lot of people to enjoy. I don't think it's a project a lot of people will like it, but it's a project that I love so much. Might be the most I've ever been in love with the project. So take that as you will. But that's kind of been what I've been working on for a little bit. And in this process, I'm working with Raquel, who is not an actress, but she, you know, I've known her for a bit. She's my girlfriend's little sister, because when we did the short film, it came down to doing this character had to be in high school, and I have a sister in high school. My girlfriend has a sister in high school, and my sister does a lot of theater production stuff, not as an actress, but as like tech and behind the scenes stuff. And she is constantly busy with movies with theater productions and all that. And Raquel doesn't do a whole lot of creative endeavors very much anymore. She used to be a dancer, actually a really good dancer. She still is, but dance was like her huge passion. But right now she just does work in school and has a lot more free time on her hands. And so when we came time to do the short, I was like, hey, are you interested in doing this film? And she's like, yeah, that sounds fun. She likes doing video stuff, and, you know, she agreed to be a part of this new production, which I'm super excited about. It's been fun getting to meet up and talk film and this project with her, hearing her thoughts about everything and all that. And it got me thinking about kind of the topic of today's episode, which is how to direct actors, specifically non-actors. We've done videos on this in the past about directing and how to be a good director. And in fact, that was my video, I think a few weeks ago, which is just the secret to good directing, which pretty much boiled down to, you know, be a nice person, be what's it called? Oh geez, I can't remember the word. Decisive. Yeah, be decisive, be a nice person. Don't let people know that you're freaking out on the inside if you are. This is all really good stuff when it comes to, I guess, the general, like, if I was going to give any main bits of advice to being a director, like, obviously be a very kind, humble person. Don't have a huge ego. Don't freak out. And if you are freaking out, don't let people know that you're freaking out. Freak out on the inside, but be direct and decisive. Those are obviously good qualities, but it's kind of vague because I think when you're starting out directing, you want to know how to talk to actors, really. You want to know how to get a good performance out of people and what that looks like. And the truth of the matter is once you get into the nitty gritty of, you know, what do you say to an actor, that's where it gets really vague and very situation to situation. And we've talked a little bit about this in some of our podcasts and videos, but I thought this would be a nice kind of opportunity to discuss how I direct and you know, what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and not just rehashing the old advice of, you know, that we've said a billion times before. Be a good person, be patient, be calm, be respectful to your crew, all that kind of stuff. I mean, again, obviously, that is the most important advice I'd give to any director. It's very vague and it isn't very specific to directing actors, but it's true. You have to treat people how you want to be treated. You know, the golden rule. I think that's the most valuable piece of advice I can give you for anyone who wants to be a director. You just have to, you know, you have to be a leader and you have to inspire people, and you can't do that if you are being a mean person, because people aren't going to want to follow you. So with that advice out of the way, the question is, okay, I get that. I am a good person. I am respecting my crew. I am, all that kind of stuff. But how do I get a good performance out of people? Well, here's how I do it. And it all starts with, finding the right person. If you cast the right person, your job as a director is very, very easy. Now, when you are a no-budget filmmaker or a super independent filmmaker, you are going to have a lot of trouble because obviously you don't have access to casting directors. You don't have access to hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of actors who want to be in your stuff and are just dying at the chance to get seen in a room with you. That's likely not the position that you're in. Most likely you are someone who likes films. You're not a part of the guild. You don't know any like big professional actors. You might know a couple people who like doing theater, but you don't know any big actors. And so you're no name. The people who you're talking to aren't really known or anything. And so this kind of advice in this kind of episode is kind of geared towards those people. However, there's going to be things in here that are applicable across all the boards of acting and directing. And I would say the advice that I give here, like, how do I put this? When it comes to filmmaking, if I give advice that is specific to DIY, no budget, truly independent filmmaking, that advice will help you at any level that you are at, I find. But it's not always the same case in the opposite direction. Like if I gave you advice that was super specific to working on a Hollywood set or a big film production, that advice isn't always going to translate to someone who, who's making a movie with just their friends in their backyard, and they have tiny crew, no money. It doesn't really work the opposite direction. But I find when you give advice, you learn making no budget movies, it usually translates up pretty well. So, anyways, yeah, finding the right person is very key in getting a good performance, because if you are casting for a big gangster villain character and your character is supposed to be menacing, supposed to be 40 years old, supposed to have a mustache, supposed to be muscular or super overweight or whatever, super intimidating, right? If that's the part for your movie, then you got to find that person. You can't cast your friend who's in high school or a middle schooler who's like 15 or whatever, or even your 20-year-old friend who's super scrawny or tiny and soft-spoken, right? That's gonna change. You just can't do that, right? Because that person is not right for the part. Now, that's not to say, let's say you don't have access to, let's say, okay, actually, before I go there, if you have a part written for that gangster character, I'd recommend, obviously, go find one of your dad's friends or your mom's friends or an older person in your life, your uncle, whoever. Cast that person in that role, because that's just naturally, people will believe that character more if they actually look the part. Now, let's say you don't have access to someone like that. Well, then I'd recommend just reworking the character and trying something different with the character. So maybe it's not the big, bulking, mean, scowling gangster character that you wrote initially. Maybe you have access to a soft-spoken 20-year-old who is kind of shy looking and kind of awkward. You can play that for kind of comedy, because picture Michael Cera in Goodfellas. That'd be kind of a funny thing. Or if you want to make it serious, rework the character so that's a part of their character, is that they are kind of this awkward young 20-something character, and that's their dynamic, is that they are kind of awkward and uncomfortable, and that might be kind of unnerving. That might be kind of a cool thing to do. But regardless, take your casting into consideration, and it's going to make your job a whole lot easier, because if you cast people for who they are as a person, it's going to make it easier to believe than casting someone outside of, their range as a person, or their range as an actor, obviously. And again, that also goes for actors just in general, not even non-actors. If you're casting a part, just find someone who looks the part, who you can buy as that part, and a lot of that can be decided within just a couple of minutes of meeting them, I find. And in the case of using friends and family, obviously you know them a lot more than just an actor who you meet for, maybe a coffee session or whatever. So you have a much better idea of their personality and their aura, what have you. So yeah, cast people first and foremost for who they are. That's the first advice I would give to getting good performances out of people. Now, where should you go from there? Well, again, I would meet up with them, talk with them about the role. For all of my movies, I always try to meet with the actors and the talent at least once or twice before filming starts. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. It all depends on the project and how extensive it is and how much I want to really dig into that character with the person. Let's say it's for a really emotional... Let's say it's for this emotional gangster movie, right? Or for this hypothetical, bulking, mean gangster character. Say I cast my uncle in this role, or so-and-so's uncle, or whatever. I'd like to take him out for coffee. Assuming you've already met with them and talked to them about the role, and they've agreed to it, I would take them out for coffee, or pie or whatever, something light, not like a huge meal necessarily, but take them out and just, talk with them about the movie, talk with them about your vision for the character, your vision for the project, what you imagine their role would be, and allow them to speak and tell them what their vision for that character in the movie is. Some actors will care only about their part in the movie. Some actors will care about everything. Some characters or actors will want to know, well, what lights are you using? Or what's the style of this movie? What are some movies that this will be similar with? And other actors are going to be like, just tell me about my character. I don't want to know anything else about it. And you'll figure out pretty quickly who, what your actor is like, their kind of preference for it all. Because again, we've worked with people who don't want to know anything about the movie before filming, and we've worked with people who want to know everything about the movie before they begin. It's all part of their process, and it's really a matter of reading someone, because if I go into a meeting with this actor and I want to just dump, here's my entire vision for the film, and I spend like 30 minutes talking nonstop. If that actor or that person just only cares about their part, they might tune out and space out, and they're probably not going to want to, they're going to, you're going to see that glaze come over their eyes, and they're just going to tune out, and that's not fun for them. So not to keep harping back to the golden rule or like very basic stuff, but just you have to be able to communicate with this person. Now, that aside, being able to communicate and all that, again, take them out for coffee and just talk about the project. That's what I do. I always start with that. Talk about your vision, talk about their vision, and talk about really anything that they want to talk about. Give them the chance to ask questions or, give feedback and all things like that. I really like to make sure that actors, they feel ownership over not just their character, but the movie itself. I want to make it feel like, this movie couldn't happen without them. And that's honestly true. Movies can't happen without actors. You need someone in front of the screen or in front of the camera to, tell most movies. I'm sure they're definitely movies without characters in them, but most of the movies with actors in them, they're gonna need someone in front of the screen or in front of the camera. So meet with the actor, talk with them about the character, and you can meet as much as you want or as little as you want. Remember, read the situation. You know this person best, this actor or whoever you've cast. You know them the best, so you got to figure out how many times it's appropriate for you to meet. I mean, again, it's different for every actor, every project. The movie we're doing right now, La Danza, I found it really helpful to, plan a kind of meeting session where it's like we go out to eat or get some coffee, we meet, we talk, we plan, and then then the next time we meet, we film. And so it kind of goes back and forth. That's what's been helpful for this process. When it came to Video Carnage, that film was where we met with the actors maybe a few times. I think we met with Travis twice before filming. We met with May twice before filming. And May, I mean, there was kind of an infamous meeting where the first time we met with May, they offered these suggestions, and then from that meeting, I completely changed the script. And then the next time we met, the movie was completely different, and it's more representative of what you see in the final film. So, but yeah, for La Danza, I'm meeting, with our lead actress maybe every other week or every week. I mean, we're checking in pretty frequently with each other, but we're not always filming. And sometimes it's just, just hanging out and, buying dinner and getting food and just hanging out, just having fun, because that's another important part of it too, which is it's kind of exhausting for non-film people to talk about film 24/7, or even actors. I mean, I don't think actors like talking about movies 24/7. Now, filmmakers love talking about movies 24/7, but sometimes even for filmmakers it can be a little bit exhausting. So when you meet with your actor, don't just jump straight into talking about the movie or the role or whatever. I mean, obviously there's a time crunch on whenever you're meeting, make the most out of that time, make it known that you're there for work. But the other night, I went out to eat with our actress in the movie, and we spent out of maybe the hour and a half that the three of us were all eating, because there's three of us there. We spent maybe 10 minutes talking about the movie and the next kind of part of the next steps, I guess. So, again, you want to make it a fun experience, especially for anybody who's a non-actor. And it's even more important, for an actor to do that as well. I mean, everybody should have fun on a movie project. So, try to make it as fun as you can. Be a personable person. Like, don't just, be a robot and only talk about film or movies or whatever. Ask them questions. And again, that kind of goes back to kind of vague advice. But let's focus back in on the question at hand. Okay, when I meet with the actor, what are we going to talk about? Like when we are talking about the movie? Well, again, talk about your vision, talk about their vision, talk about the overall project, their character, stuff like that. But here's some good generic questions to ask them when it comes to getting into the nitty-gritty of their character. Where does that character come from? What's their backstory? You can pitch ideas or have them pitch ideas to you, your actor or yourself, assuming you're the writer-director. What does your character want most in the world? At that moment, what does your character want? What is the character afraid of? What would be the worst thing in the world to happen to that character? What's the defining moment from their life? I mean, what are weird tics about your characters? Is when they put on their shoes, do they need to put the left shoe on first or the right one? Do they put socks on first and then shoes together, or sock, shoe? How do they brush their teeth? How do they stand when they're just walking? These are good things to just talk about, just really getting into the details of the character. Now, again, if you're working with non-actors, they actually might not care about that stuff so much. So when I'm meeting with actors, I just keep it, or non-actors who don't really get into all the character stuff, I just kind of keep it fun and vague. I'll just say, like, for instance, I knew that there's a lot of kind of emotional stuff that goes into the end of consciousness short we made, a couple months. Oh, geez, it was a couple months ago. Yeah, it was. I knew there was a lot of emotions that went into that script for that character. Now, our actress didn't need to know that. I would have just bored her head off if I, theorized about this hypothetical character for hours on end. So instead, I just said, Pretty much your character's on the run from my character. You're going to show up, you're going to fly, you're going to have superpowers, and that's about it. And that was really it. But I think there's obviously the character at that moment, in my opinion, had some strong emotions going on. But I knew that, kind of like I've talked about before, you can direct a performance kind of mechanically. Like, you don't always have to get into the emotions of the scene. Sometimes you can just simply say, hey, frown your brow a little bit more, close your eyes, squeeze your eyes shut, open your mouth really wide, or look this way or look that way. Like, it doesn't always have to be coming from a place of emotion. Sometimes you can just convey that through just body language on the screen. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, when you meet with your actor, just make sure you're getting the most out of that time, both in terms of answering these questions and getting into any emotional work that you need to get into, getting into any planning work that you need to get into. Just make sure that you're covering all your bases. Sometimes it might take many meetings. Sometimes it might take one meeting. It all depends on who you're working with, how they like to work, and how you like to work. Now I say that, and I think that's the biggest thing to take away from meetings. Me personally, let's use this as an example. Whenever you hear about actors in Hollywood and directors talking about characters, usually what it seems to be is that work, I think we all have this vision of like the artistic director and the actor who's in tune with the emotions of the characters and wants to know, what's my motivation? I think we have a vision or an image of that scenario in our heads, which is like the director and the writer, or the director and the actor huddled together on set, deep in discussion, kind of breaking down the philosophy of this character in this movie and existentialism and all that kind of stuff, right? That's kind of the idea, or that's the image I get when I think about actors and directors communicating. Now, that might be all fine if you have, the time and money to do that. But on a no-budget film set, I kind of like to be economic about all that stuff. I don't have time to sit down and talk about a character's motivations for hours on end when we're supposed to be filming. Instead, all of that journey stuff, all of that background stuff, all of that knowledge, all of that kind of emotional work for the character, I think should be done prior to the camera start rolling, prior to the start date of shooting. Because it's in that time that I find it's really valuable to get to know what makes your actor tick, what makes their character tick, and how do we come up with a process that is going to make this work? How do we come up with a shorthand where we're going to be able to communicate? There's a short film I made a few years ago, 6 years ago, called My Father Was a Spaceman. I think I met with the actors twice prior to filming, and in that time, it was more kind of film-oriented, sitting down and digging into the characters and their backstories and asking the actors about their personal experiences and how that might relate to their character. And what that did was it allowed for us to create a shorthand. So when we were on set, I could quickly say this thing to the actor or that thing to the actor and just say, hey, remember this that we talked about in me? Think about that. Or like let's bring that to the set, or let's bring that to your character right here in this moment. That's what's going on here. So all that to say, all the emotional groundwork, I think, should be done prior to the cameras rolling. Now, not everybody's like that, but that's just how I like to work personally. Now, next thing when it comes to on-set, I think this is probably the biggest question. It's probably what people wonder about the most when it comes to directing actors, which is, you're on set or on location, cameras are rolling, your actor just delivered a performance. What am I supposed to say to them? Sorry, I just blew up the mic. What am I supposed to say to the actor to adjust the performance, to say do that again, or to, just give feedback? What am I supposed to do? Well, let's go through the day of filming. Let's say we're shooting 3 scenes in a day. It's kind of a low amount for a no-budget film. Usually I feel like no-budget films, you shoot like 20 scenes in a day. But let's just say we're shooting 3 scenes. When you show up to set, disregarding the crew initially. Like I'm ignoring the aspect of you have a crew that you're working with. I'm just gonna only talk about the directing actors kind of things. When you show up to a set, when everybody's there, I like to let everybody know, here's the plan for the day. Here's the order of the scenes. Here's what we're doing first. Any questions? No questions? Let's get set up. In that time, maybe your actor likes to retreat and go into their be isolated. Let them do that. If not, I like to meet with them and maybe I'll run lines with them, or I'll say, okay, so here's my vision for the scene. This is what's happening with the character, this or that. I mean, it really is dependent on the emotional content of the scene and how your actor likes to perform. If I'm directing non-actors who aren't into the whole character getting into it kind of thing, I just like to say, here's what we're doing, here's what I'd recommend doing for your performance, and let's just play and have fun. If they like to get into the emotional stuff, I like to give it a little quick, okay, here's what we're doing. Remember this from our meeting. Remember this that we talked about. Try to tap into this or that or whatever. And then I just kind of let them simmer with that until cameras start rolling. Now, cameras roll. You yell action. You yell cut. Let's say it was a subpar performance. A performance that you were not envisioning. I would go over to them. And now this is where thinking on your feet, you really have to think on your feet, because obviously you can't just stand there and say, so can I come over here, actor friend? And then they're like, okay, how was that? And be like, and you can't just stand there thinking for a minute, 30 seconds, even 20 seconds is kind of a lot. If they give a subpar performance, bring them, you have to know how to change it. Now, how to change it's going to be different for every film, every moment, every scene, that. And it just, knowing how to change things just comes with time and doing it over and over again and just practice, right? The more you practice something, the better you are at it. And thinking on your feet and directing, that's just something that I think some directors have had a lot of experience with and they're comfortable with it. Other directors are not. I feel like I'm competent, or I'm pretty comfortable with it. I'm not saying I'm great at it, but I think I'm comfortable with it at the very least. Anyways, if someone gives a subpar performance or performance I wasn't really looking for, I didn't really like, I have to know what it is I want them to change. Sometimes that's a line that wasn't delivered well. So I'll say something like, so this line right here, bring out more anger and less sadness. Or for this line over here, let's make it a little bit, try it starting it from a happy place. And throughout your monologue, ramp yourself to get angry. Let's say, hypotheticals. Let's say it's a scene where there's a character who's really angry at another character. I didn't buy them as being angry. I didn't buy my actors being angry. I might go up to my actor and say, instead of getting loud, what if you force yourself to be quiet, restrain yourself, kind of talk through your teeth, kind of like this, like kind of restrain yourself. Those are kind of things that ways that I might direct non-actors. Obviously, when it comes to real actors, there's, again, I can't restate this enough times, but everybody's process is different. Some people do like line readings. Some people hate line readings. Most non-actors have no problem with line readings. And I always ask actors if they're okay with a line reading. But I usually say that for a last case scenario. But anyways, when it comes to giving adjustments, make your direction very clear and don't overload them. That's very important. Do not overload their brain. Give them one thing to adjust at a time, right? When it comes to making adjustments, let's say, action, they do the scene, cut, I want to adjust their performance. I bring them over and say, hey, that was really great. I love that. Compliment what you liked in the scene. I mean, you got to do the sandwich kind of, if you've never heard of it, the sandwich criticism is start with something that you liked, then go to something that could be improved, and then end it with you're doing great. Awesome job at this. I'm really loving this thing. So it's really important to, I mean, you're there to be their cheerleader. You're there to build them up. If they feel like they're being criticized and watched constantly, that's just not going to make them comfortable, not going to get a good performance out of them. So really, I mean, you got to butter them up. You should be their number one fan. You cast them for a reason. The analogy I always like to use is it's kind of like you find a really good archer, right? And you're in a tree, or you're in a forest with a lot of different trees, and you got to get, and you're not, you yourself, you are not giving them the ability to land a bullseye with a bow and arrow. But what you're doing instead is you're saying, instead of hitting a bullseye in that tree, aim at that tree. And that's kind of what adjusting is, and directing is, when it comes to directing actors. So when it comes to making adjustments, again, keep it really simple, keep it clear, keep it concise. Don't overload them with information. And sometimes blocking comes into effect here. Sometimes it's like, hey, instead of saying it standing up, why don't you pace around the room and just see how that feels? Or why don't you eat some food as you're delivering this line or whatever? Again, it's going to vary film to film, but maybe sometimes giving the actors something to do. That's usually a thing that I find is really kind of interesting, is if you give your actors something physical to do, it helps takes their mind off of the words and they're not really thinking about it, and it comes more natural to them. So that's just something to consider if when it comes to readjusting a scene, or readjusting a performance. Yeah. Now, let's say they do the scene again and you liked it, you thought it was great, but you want to get another take just in case. Or maybe not even just in case. Maybe, let's say you liked it, you didn't love it. Like, it's a solid performance. You'd use that take if you had to, but you think there's more that could be done. So this is where you have to get specific. Before, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, I didn't really care for anything in that take. What you got to do is, you make one adjustment at a time until you get it to a place where you're happy with. Then once you're happy with it and you're like, okay, if only this line was read differently, or only this thing was read differently, or whatever, that's when you have to get uber specific with your direction. That's where, it's not enough just to say, great, that was great, let's do it again. Well, you're kind of leaving your actor in the dark if you say that. That's kind of like they have no gauge for if what they're doing is working, if you're liking it, if that's what you're looking for. Because if you don't tell an actor anything, some actors are just content doing the same thing over and over again. Some actors are going to give you wildly different things on each take. It depends on the person. So I really recommend is when you're getting kind of closer to that range of, ooh, this is what I'm looking for from this performance, you got to give them, again, show them, point to the tree that you want them to fire at. You have to kind of keep them on track, keep them focused on that with the end goal in mind. You have to, again, communicate with them. Tell them what you want. Because otherwise, if you just say, great, let's do it again. Great, let's do it again. Let's go again. They have no idea why they're doing it again. And so they don't know if they should do the same thing. They don't know if they should do a different thing. And then it's just kind of a waste of time because neither of you are communicating with each other. What you got to do is say, that was excellent. Let's do that again. But on the very last line, I want you to bring the intonation up. All right? That's what I'm looking for here. And doing something like that. Or, that was really, really good. Let's do it again. I really loved what you did that time. Except when you say the line, I can't believe you did this. Don't get loud. Bring it down and kind of whisper it or something. Get specific with what you're looking for. The closer you get to that, great performance, the kind of more specific you have to be. And it's tricky. It's a balancing act, again, because you don't want to feel like you're like the puppet master for your actor. You don't want to give them so many directions that they have to remember it. You have to kind of organically lead them to this place where they're coming to this performance on their own, but you're guiding them there, if that makes sense. Like if I tell you to, I don't know, let's say there's a complicated recipe that you got to make, like a big soup or something. You can't just tell someone, do this, do all these things. You just can't read them the entire recipe and then be like, okay, now do it, right? You have to, it's one step at a time. First, let's chop up the carrots. Like, chop up the carrots. Great, you chopped up the carrots. Now let's dice some onions. Perfect. Now let's, put the chicken stock in the pot and let's boil it. And you got to baby steps, building blocks. Again, you cannot just dump all that information on them, because they're not going to give a good performance. Give it to them a little bit at a time, and the farther along you go, the more specific you might have to be. And again, everybody's different. So different things are going to work for different people, but this is just what has worked for me in the past, and I think it's what will work for you, hopefully. Other things to consider when it comes to directing people on set or on location, I think it's really important that you ask them if they need a break. Check in with them if they need a break. And along those lines, set goals along the scene. Let's say you have, let's say you're working on a scene and you have 2 more scenes to go, but there's like 5 more shots that you need to get. Say, okay, we're going to do these next 5 shots, and then we're going to break for 15 minutes. And then do it. Follow through with those goals. It kind of gives them a sense of kind of like, little checkpoints along the way. It gives your crew checkpoints as well. Breaks are important. Staying hydrated, keeping them fed. Checking with them about like, hey, do you need a drink? Do you need something to eat really quick? All that kind of stuff. Again, going back to be a good person, be a respectful person, take their needs into consideration. And if an actor is getting annoyed with you, or you can sense there's kind of some, maybe not spoken tension, but just kind of like, you can tell they're kind of not enjoying this anymore. As soon as you catch a whiff of that, this might be unpopular, but your goal then is to end shooting as quick as possible. And because if they're an unhappy actor or an unhappy crew on any low budget set could kill a film. You know what I mean? Like, 1, if they're annoyed, they're not going to give you their best performance. 2, if they're annoyed and not having fun, they're annoyed and not having fun, and they're not going to want to come back for filming another time. So as soon as you get a whiff of like, oh my gosh, this person's a little bit tired of this, I might be pushing a little too far, pull back immediately. My kind of go-to is like, okay, if you're in the middle of, if you're filming a scene, or if you're filming a take or a shot or whatever, wrap up finish the shot first, then be like, okay, let's take a break. Give them some extra time to just take a break, relax. At the end of the break, check in with them, say, so how you feeling? What's going on? Are you doing all right? Don't like, again, this is assuming that it's all unspoken. Sometimes an actor might be like, oh my gosh, another take, blah, blah, blah. There might be kind of more spoken tension. I'm talking about like, let's say you're reading an actor and they're just like, you can tell they're a little bit checked out. But they're not saying anything. They're just like, yep, I'm okay. I'm good. But you can sense that, they're kind of a little bit over this. Give them, finish up whatever you're finishing really quick. If you're on a shot, finish that shot. If you are at the end of a scene, make sure you just finish that scene, but don't like go super long. Just wrap up whatever you got to do. Call for a break. At the end of that break, check in with them. How you doing? You feeling tired? Doing okay? If they're truly, truly annoyed or kind of over it, they'll probably just say, I'm feeling really tired. Not feeling that great. If that's the case, it depends, it depends on the shoot, but I would, my instinct is to say, okay, then let's just wrap for tonight and we'll be done. And it might be a pain in the butt scheduling wise later on, but you're going to send your actor home a lot more happy than you would be if you push them to their limit. If they do not say that they're annoyed and they're like, yeah, I'm good, I'm doing okay, and they're just kind of, you can kind of tell maybe they might be tired, or maybe they're just annoyed or whatever at something. Even if they don't say it, but you can sense it, I would say, give them an option. Like, so here's what we have to do left. This is what we have to do. Are you okay if we do this, or would you like to just call it an early night right now? And give them that option. Give them that autonomy, because again, I'm assuming you're probably not paying them because this is a super no budget set. So, remind them. We shouldn't have to remind them necessarily, but again, remind them. You should be like, you are volunteering your time. You are appreciated. I love that you're here. It's a huge help to me. I love having you. But if you are too tired, if you want to call it early, you can. And give them that option. You got to have a lot of faith in that person, in that actor. It's giving them a lot of choices or a lot of power. But again, sometimes it's good just to call it early. That way, they go home happy and be like, oh my gosh, my director sensed that I was kind of, I was a little tired. I wasn't really feeling it. I just wanted the night to end. And then it did. And it's like, that's great. That director really kind of respected my feelings and was like listening to my needs and all that stuff. And I'm really happy that I get to work with someone like that. Now, again, it might be different if you're filming like the climax of the movie and you're going to lose your actor, the following day or whatever. There's different circumstances in which that's not always the case. But if it's just kind of like an average shooting night or whatever, if you're check in with them after giving them a break. Check in with them. How are you doing? Are you doing good? If they're really annoyed and they say they want to go home, let them go home. If they don't say that and they're like, yeah, I'm good, give them that option anyway, because you never know. They might want to say something but feel like they're kind of imposing on you if they bring that up. So just give them that option. Make sure that they're okay. And best case scenario, I guess they'll either agree and be like, yep, really, I can go home? Okay, cool, thanks. And they might take you up on that. They might be like, wow, that was really nice and respectful. And they might realize like, I'm a little bit tired, but ultimately we only have a little bit more to go. It's not that much. I can stay for a little bit. I can power through it. And they might agree to stay. And sometimes they just might seem tired, but they're not actually tired. They just feel like they are. And so they might be like, oh no, I'm totally fine. Like if I'm good, let's do this. And again, that all comes down to reading people and just reading the room and getting a gauge on this person and this actor. You know them more than I do, this hypothetical person that you're thinking of. So just, you got to learn how to communicate. And that's just super duper important when it comes to directing in all aspects, directing actors, your crew members, everyone. And I think that's about it when it comes to directing actors. At least that's everything that I can think of off the top of my head. Let's see. Any other things to note? I always try to overestimate the amount of time something will take. I take that into account when to scheduling. That way, again, when actors are like, when they show up to a scene, let's say if I think that a scene will be shot in an hour, I'll tell them it's going to take an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes. That way, when we're done with the scene at an hour in, they're like, oh my gosh, we're ahead of time. This is awesome. And that just helps with morale for the crew and everybody in general. I think is when you just kind of overestimate the amount of time things will take. That's something that helps when directing. I like to use the phrase, have fun on this take. Usually, if you go through a bunch of takes or shots of your actor, you'd go through a scene, give them one just to play around with. Once I got everything that I need, I'll say, okay, I've got everything I need. Let's do this scene one more time. And this time, just have fun. Just play around. Try something new and different. Those can be pretty, fun words for an actor to hear. Or, if they're a non-actor, then maybe they're like, I don't know what to do, so I'll just do the same thing over and over again. And again, you know your actor better than I do, so you might get something from that. You might not. You never know. But yeah, I think if you have any questions about any kind of acting or logistics kind of specific directing actors kind of advice, please leave a comment down below, or you can send us an email, or send us a DM on social media, because directing actors, it's a tricky thing to figure out, and the best way to learn how to do it is just to do it. But every now and then it's kind of like, oh gee, like how do you do this, or how am I going to do this? And you have a lot of questions. So hopefully that answered most of your questions in terms of directing actors or getting good performances out of actors. And remember, at the end of the day, it's all subjective. I don't think that there's anything as a bad performance necessarily. It all comes down to the director and what the director wants. So when you say, I got everything you need, or I got everything I need, you got to mean it. Make sure that you don't go away from a scene, not getting all the lines or all the performance that you wanted. Because likely the performance that you envision is what will affect the audience the most, right? Because you're the director, you're kind of the tastemaker of this whole movie. You're crafting this experience for everyone. If you don't get the performance you wanted, then the audience is probably going to feel that, and it's not going to gel well with the rest of the movie. So, and your job is to make your actors look good and sell them as this character just as much as it's their job to kind of be the character. So, I'm sure if it came down to, settling on a so-so performance versus doing another take and coming across as amazing, I think most actors would prefer to come across as amazing and not a subpar actor, or not give a subpar performance. But again, it's all kind of subjective, and it's kind of like you have to know what you want at the end of the day. If you know what you want, then it's going to be a lot easier to direct actors, and that's kind of what it comes down to. Anyways, that was a lot of me talking for about actors. Oops, blowing in the mic again. Let's move on to the next segment of our show, which is what are you watching? So this is the 25th of April when I'm recording this. This last weekend, two movies came out that I was super excited to see, and I was not disappointed in either of them. First, I saw The Northmen, which was directed, excuse me, it was directed by Robert Eggers, his new movie, the filmmaker who made The Witch and The Lighthouse. And as far as I'm concerned, he's 3 for 3 with me. Love The Witch, love The Lighthouse, love The Northmen. Something that makes him stand out and makes him really unique is his attention to historical detail, and kind of the immersiveness of his movies really comes down to that detail and that just kind of specificity when it comes to the time period, whether it be the language or the costumes or the just kind of the slow nature of his movies, kind of slower paced nature of everything. And The Northman is no different. I think The Northman's a little bit different, I think, because compared to his other movies, I think The Northman was actually rather quick. It was pretty fast-paced compared to The Lighthouse or The Witch, which I thought was pretty interesting. It wasn't bad. It was just different, and it was kind of interesting to see Robert Eggers, his movies be paced a little bit quicker, and that had an interesting effect on everything, especially when you're comparing his 3 movies together. And it made me really, really excited for, apparently he's doing a Nosferatu remake next, which was supposed to happen after The Witch, and then it was stalled and put on the back burner, but now it's happening again with Anya Taylor-Joy as Mina Harker, or whatever the main character is named. I know it's kind of different every Dracula adaptation. They changed the main girl's name, but that is going to be super duper fun, I think, and it made me super pumped for that. The other movie I saw this weekend was, it's a long title, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. So that was the Nick Cage movie where he stars as himself. And for me, in my opinion, I think Nick Cage is the greatest actor of all time. Unironically, I think he makes very bold decisions. He makes always interesting decisions. He's an actor who elevates material. If it's a bad movie or a bad script, he'll take, not that I believe in a bad script, but let's say it's not an amazing script necessarily, to be hyperbolic about it. He'll take that and he'll make it at least like an interesting, or at least like an okay, script, the way he delivers it. if it's a great script, he'll turn it into an amazing movie. And he's always making interesting choices. And the way he does acting, I see it as a very kind of spiritual kind of thing. He's not. I think a lot of acting these days is centered around realism. And if you watch a lot of acting movies with actors in it, like from the 30s or the 20s or the 40s or whatever, that kind of style of acting is very much comes from theater and plays and is very performative, and it's not necessarily realistic, but it was kind of a relic of the theater and certain acting schools, because they would teach you, I think, I forget the name, but there were certain acting schools back then. They teach you how to act a certain way. and I think the tendency today is people much prefer realism when it comes to acting, acting how people would actually act. And I think what Nick Cage does is he performs not as like, he kind of forgoes realism, and he uses acting as kind of like any other tool you would do when you're making a movie. Like, he's thinking about acting in terms of, what are motifs I can use for my character throughout the movie? How do those motifs change? How do those motifs morph? How do they stay the same? What does it mean when I do this thing here and there, regardless of realism, regardless of what audiences today kind of want? What he's doing is more, he kind of harkens back to more ancient traditions and more older traditions of acting, like something like kabuki theater, or something like from the silent era, like German expressionism. There's a lot of that in the vampire movie. I forget what it's called. Vampire's Kiss, I think, right? There's a lot of that in there where he is doing these things with his face which is totally unrealistic, but he's not doing it for realism. He's doing that to convey a strong emotion to us, regardless of realism, and just kind of saying, forget realism, I'm going for something else here. But of course, he's also an actor who can do very understated, very kind of realistic performances as well. He has a whole range of things that he does, and I think the most important part of him is like he elevates any project he's a part of, whether it's a film that I don't personally click with or a film that I really like. Whenever Nick Cage is on screen, he makes me infinitely more interested in whatever he's doing. So it was cool to see him play the the character Nick Cage, because that's kind of, I would imagine that'd be a challenge for him, because he puts a lot of thought into his characters. So, what was his process for playing the character of Nick Cage, and where does Nick Cage the person end, and where does Nick Cage the character begin, and where's the overlap? That would be something that I would love to know. But yeah, that was a fun movie, really fun movie. I liked it a lot. Both of those movies, Northmen and Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, super fun movies, and recommend them both. Aside from that, I haven't been watching a whole lot of anything else. A lot of TV as per usual, a lot of cartoons. I've been watching The Proud Family a lot on Disney Plus. Been watching a lot of Clone Wars and Rebels and Star Wars related TV shows. Bad Batch. Been rewatching. Just because I'm in kind of a mood, just to veg out on the TV at the end of a long day. In fact, it's the end of my day, or should be the end of my day, but I still got a lot of stuff to do. I have to do after recording this, but it's the life of an independent filmmaker. Yeah. Anyways, so I guess this is the final part in our show, which is called What Are You Working On? Kind of explained that I've been working on the newest feature film, La Danza, but just to reiterate, making La Danza, it's going great. I'm having a lot of fun. And also, if it's not out already, I haven't forgotten about the the song. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we made a movie called Crescendo with the RC Film boys. It's on their channel. Check it out. But we made a film, and there's an original song in it, and I recorded the original song, and I think I mean, as of now, the plan is it's going to be released on Spotify soon. I don't know when, but I'm going to try to make a music video in the spare time between shooting La Danza, essentially, like between shooting blocks. So stay tuned for that, both the release of the song and the music video, whenever that happens. But yeah, everything's been pretty good here. Thank you for listening, everyone. Hope you found this interesting. Hope you found this educational. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. If you're listening to us on Spotify, we have a YouTube channel. Go ahead and check us out at Doom Productions. If you were listening to us on YouTube, go ahead and check out our Spotify, where we post these episodes every Friday. And like and subscribe if you like this podcast and want to stay up to date on our projects, or want to know more about our advice and our insight into filmmaking. It takes a couple seconds out of your time, but means a whole lot to us, and something cool might pop up in your subscriptions one day. So thank you for listening, everybody, and until the next video, have a good week.